Body to Integrate Yourself with Allison Pillow and Maya Gottlieb. You can reach Allison at pureenergypdx.com, and you can reach me at Maya Gottlieb at mayagottlieb.com.
Yeah.
So today we are with Taylor Kruse. He's with KRUSE ELITE, and they offer a unique neuro-centric approach to personal training, including vision, balance, respiration, and sensory training, in addition to traditional forms of strength training. They encourage their individuals to reach a greater level of health and performance than they've ever known how. Most of what they work with is how to help people become unstoppable. With their 25 years in health and fitness, Taylor and Alicia are working in the industry to help others to find how they can be their best. And one of the things they can provide is an online membership where you can actually work with them one-on-one. And they also have private sessions that you can have with them. Their background ranges from Z-Health Performance and Applied Neurology, the Burn-Deco method, sorry if I pronounced that wrong, acupuncture and Chinese medicine, and backgrounds in martial arts, Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu, and wrestling. Welcome to the show, Taylor. How are you?
Awesome. Awesome. Thank you guys for having me on.
Yeah. Great. So Taylor, we met at Z-Health and their recent structure or next evolution. We can't figure out which one that was.
It's all a blur.
Once you sit in those classes, you're kind of what they call one person called it the vortex, the sucking vortex of knowledge.
Yeah, seriously.
But in all truth, it is an amazing courses to take and learn, because it provides such possibilities and knowledge of how the body actually can do amazing things, more than we've ever really get told in certain fields of the industry of health and fitness. So Taylor, tell us a little bit about why you got into Z-Health, and what's your passion about in terms of how to help someone in their progression of themselves.
So it kind of started, I guess it started for me as an athlete, and I just kind of have that stereotypical story of being an athlete. And I was an athlete in college as well as in high school, and my main sport was wrestling, and I had pain. I had kind of unexplained pain. I was dealing with chronic elbow pain, and nobody, I exhausted kind of all the resources that I had at the time, and nobody could really help me understand what was going on and why I couldn't use my body the way that I wanted to without having pain that was kind of sidelining me. So that's kind of been like, that experience for me was really the driving force, I think, to get me into health and movement. And I started as a personal trainer right away out of college. So this was back in 2000. I probably really started in 2007. I graduated before that, but I quickly realized as a personal trainer and a coach that all my clients were in pain too. And so it just like immediately put me at a crossroads where I was trying to figure out, like, what is my purpose in this field? I'm supposed to help people move better, but instead of really targeting things, I find myself working around things so that people can actually safely get through their training or their fitness class, whatever it was. And it really started it put me in a place where I started pursuing different forms of education that would allow me to sort of build a toolbox so that I could actually deal with some of these things and help people, and not just feel like I was working around their pain. And so it was after a long journey of, in the introduction, you mentioned the Burdenko method. It was a long journey of learning the Burdenko method, which is a really unique system of Russian physical education, conditioning, training, rehab. There's lots of elements to it that I encountered a colleague at the time who actually referred me into Z-Health. And he basically saw what I was doing, and he was like, oh, wow, this is super novel. Do you know about Z-Health? And at the time I didn't, and I couldn't believe that I hadn't heard of them yet. And he's like, you've got to check this out because it goes so well with what you're already doing. And that's what got me into Z-Health. So that was almost about 4 years ago. I think was when I took my first Z Health course. And so from there on, I've sort of, been building that toolbox and adding to it.
Yeah. So as you've worked with your clients, what was the biggest change, like in terms of, you were talking about how you were working around pain. What
Mhm.
were like some of the stories that you kind of took into action in terms of being able to help someone get out of pain and then move them?
Well, first I couldn't help them. It started there. And that's like really was the driving force. Like I thought I had tools,
Mm,
and I was trying to apply them and giving it everything I had to do so, but I really didn't have the means of being able to assess at the time whether or
mm.
not what I was doing was actually helping them. So it started with frustration,
Yeah.
and it's not like that went away immediately. As I started building that toolbox and moving more through the Z Health curriculum, I mean, it was a slow process in terms of learning how to apply this stuff. But I literally went from having to work around people's pain to somebody comes in and they have knee pain, and it's a 4 out of 10, 5 out of 10, and we do a little problem solving and get that 5 out of 10 to a 0, and now we can have our training session back.
Mm,
And that, when I was able to finally start doing stuff like that, it just changed everything. It
yeah.
changed everything. And so that's a really common thing that happens.
Yeah. And once that kind of confidence comes with the fact that you get to finally see the progression of knowledge, so that you take
Yeah.
all that information, and it's overwhelming at first because, I mean, any of the information is so different from how we were taught in school and how the body works. So
Yeah.
if you ever look at pain and how pain is now, been talked about in a different way, because the brain being part of the real opener of what happens. So like if you kind of work with the brain, you kind of get to know what's happening in the person's body. So
Yeah.
it's kind of crazy because all this can actually change a lot of people really quickly. And I
Yeah.
think people tend to even question, like, did that really happen? Like, wow, what just happened? How did you do that? And
Hmm.
why am I moving my elbow to help my knee? Kind of
Yeah.
those kind of moments, right?
Definitely. Definitely.
Well, can we, Taylor, can you explain a little bit of how it works and to our audience about what you're talking about? Because they may not,
Sure.
know how to approach exercise this way.
Yeah. Yeah. So basically what we're talking about here is looking at movement and fitness and even rehabilitation through more of a neurocentric lens. And so basically what we do is we approach everything as basically we're looking at a person's neurology as they move to sort of understand what parts of their brain and their neurology might not be working the way that we want it to work, because an expression of good movement is really an expression of good brain function. And when we have pain or we have a movement dysfunction, we have higher order systems that are creating some of those dysfunctions. So looking through a neurocentric lens allows you to assess everything that you're doing and figure out what is working good and what might not be working good. And then we design an exercise to target those parts of their neurology. And through an assessment process, we figure out whether or not what we're actually doing is helping. And the neat thing about it is we figure that out momentarily. So one of the kind of paradigm shifts for our clients is that they don't have to wait 12 weeks to see whether or not something is making them better. We can actually figure out whether or not it's making them better right now. And that's just simply because the brain and the nervous system is monitoring everything that we do every moment that we do it. So it's just every moment that goes by, your nervous system is perceiving whether or not anything that you're doing is actually safe or not. And so a lot of times we kind of laugh and say we're sort of professional threat reducers, and we make people feel safe, and then we offer them exercise in a more novel and challenging way. And that makes the brain happy. And oftentimes when you do this, you will see pain immediately decrease and performance immediately increase.
I
Very
like
good.
that.
Yeah. So give me an example of where someone's nervous system would have gone wrong, or if we can use that term, I guess,
Sure.
or, maybe they've been through some trauma. Like, how do you go about, I mean, you have
Sure.
it sounds like you have a clear assessment process for sure. And I know talking to
Yeah.
Maya, she's explained to me her assessment process as well. But I'm just curious about this
Yeah.
because this is really, really cool, because it sounds like to me that you can actually get to the crux of the problem a lot quicker than a standard like personal trainer can. And using the knowledge that we kind of all know as trainers, like maybe give us an example of a trauma that, or something that would throw someone's nervous system off, so they wouldn't be aware of like muscles functioning, or that, or even that their brain wasn't really functioning optimally.
Sure. Yeah. I guess where I'll start is sometimes there doesn't have to be a problem.
Right.
Sometimes it's literally that a person just hasn't experienced any kind of novel exercise before.
Right.
And what you're really dealing with at that point is basically disuse. And so
Yeah.
you can have disturbances going on in your nervous system and in your brain function just by simply not doing the right things, or just not having the right experiences and building a foundation. So sometimes that is the reason why a person has movement issues or has pain in their body. And then other times it really comes down to exploring their health history. And you really do have to do some digging, because the mystery really always is in the history.
Yeah.
And you want to be looking at things that have happened through the course of a person's life, and that will help us connect the dots. And basically, when I'm taking a very thorough history, I am sort of formulating an assessment process to bring them through that's kind of customized based on what they're telling me. And
Mhm.
so, for example, if you tell me that, you've had a surgery, and obviously a surgery, there's going to be scarring. And so like
Right.
I'm writing stuff down that I think is going to be very important, because I'm now going to want to go look at those scars and see how those areas of your body are moving. And so we're sort of marking those findings, and it could be anything from, reoccurring, ankle sprains, to past surgeries, to dental work, to concussions. Anything matters, and that will help us kind of figure out where we want to begin. And
Yes.
then, yeah, and then our in the moment assessments tell us a lot too. I want to know how a person's breathing when they come in the first time. I want to know a little bit about their visual system, because if you have visual system threats, that's going to play a large role in how much pain you might feel, or any performance issues that you have. I want to know how a person is balancing the first day that I meet them, because if you have balance threats,
Yeah.
that's going to play some role in any issues that you might have. And those are the big ones that I'm looking at on day one. And then it's just a process from there, connecting the dots.
Cool. Well, thank you. Yeah, you answered that beautifully. Thanks, Taylor. I have another follow-up question though, if Maya
Sure.
doesn't mind. I really am curious because I've been wanting to talk about this for a while, and I've taken people on hikes before, and we've talked about sight and how important it is to look far off in distances, to look at landscapes, and to use those muscles in your eyes to do that, because most of the time we're in enclosed spaces, or we're in front of a computer or phone. So, I would love to hear more about what you've discovered through the Z Health process with the vestibular system, and what would it mean for someone like this is a common thing. I'll just take for example, nearsightedness is very common for people to get as they get older, or to develop.
Mhm.
What would that, because I feel like that is actually something that can be remedied through the Z Health system, or something like that, really pretty quickly, but people generally think it's like forever, right? They're now
Yeah.
nearsighted forever.
Yeah.
What is an example of, well, that's an example, but how can you get yourself out of something like becoming nearsighted all of a sudden?
Yeah.
In addition to some of the examples I just said, by going outside, looking far away, and that kind of thing.
Yeah. Well, I mean, the visual, when I first got into Z Health, I think that was probably the biggest paradigm shift, is that your eyes matter.
Yeah.
And I think what really is startling for people when they learn this is to learn that roughly 70% of postural activity is mediated by our visual system. So
Wow.
for me to think about that and kind of rewinding back to my athletic career, I was an intense athlete and I trained so hard and I was motivated and I did everything that I think athletes are supposed to do. And I never did an eye drill. I never did a vision drill
Right.
of any kind. And so already I thought I was doing everything right. And I was missing something that has a percentage on it, like 70%. So right away, when you start learning that the visual system matters, it is a huge paradigm shift because it is basically such a large part of our brain function. It is mediating a lot of reflexive activities in our body. So
Yeah.
if you want to have good posture, you have to have good eyes. And if you want to be a stable person, you have to have stable eyes. And like to your point, in our culture right now, we get so boxed in that cubicle. We're
Right.
not using our visual skills to their fullest extent. And just like anything else, I mean, if we don't use our bodies and move and our muscles atrophy, eyes do the same thing. I mean, what you don't use, you lose. It's true. And so if you're not looking to the horizon a lot and you're not looking in front of you a lot, or you're not moving your eyes in full ranges of motion, that is not a good thing because our eyes are reflexively connected to so many different functions in our body. And that's not even to mention how important they are for athletic performance. I mean, most of the decisions that we make in a sport performance context are decisions that we make based on visual information and what type of meaning we get from that visual information.
And one of those reflexive thing is the vestibular. You know, if you're even just looking to walk down the street,
Yeah.
you don't even have to be an acrobatic or some kind of, crazy balance beam. You really just want to walk like down the street without having some impairment. That
Yeah.
is part of the reasons why the vision is so crucial.
Absolutely. Absolutely. It plays such a huge role in all of the things that we do on a daily basis that we kind of take for granted.
Yeah. And one of the great things I noticed about Z Health is everything is pretty practical. Like everything that I've never seen, I can see why I would want to utilize it in a way that it was like like brushing my teeth. Eye circles to just doing certain pencil push-ups and these are just drills that you can take with you. Like they don't have to have any major equipment. You don't have to do anything to, special. And that's the
It's
thing I
true.
like about it is that everything you can do is like something that, oh, I can do this right now. I don't need to
Yeah.
wait 5 minutes or 10 hours or whatever. I can do
Yeah.
this right this moment. And then it doesn't become a to-do list. It becomes an easy kind of everyday event.
Yeah, I agree. I always make the joke that we can kind of do our job in an airplane bathroom because
Yeah.
sometimes all you need is
Finger.
this guy right here to look at.
Yeah.
And that's one of my favorite things about Z Health is that you don't need a lot of equipment to do some of this stuff.
Mm-hmm.
And any equipment that you bring into it is great, but you don't need it. And I've always been kind of a low tech guy.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
And that's important to me. I love movement and not necessarily movement with expensive equipment if I don't need it.
Mm-hmm.
And so that is one of my favorite parts about the system too.
Yeah,
That's
it's kind of
awesome.
a MacGyver-ish type of thing, like what can
Yeah.
I use? I
Yeah.
don't have this, but I can use
What do I
this. Let's
have?
try that.
Yeah,
Yeah, that's
exactly.
great. Yeah, and it's like these micro movements that we need to really place more emphasis on, and people don't. They don't place much importance on the tiny movements that we
Yeah.
really can go a long way in our lives and prevent us from having things like eyeglasses or contacts later in life, or hearing aids, you name it,
Yeah.
orthotics. You think about all the things that we start to buy as we get older that we feel like we need, when
Yeah.
we could just be, rolling a ball under our foot, or moving our toes, or stretching our toes, or moving the muscles in our feet, and then you can prevent yourself from having an orthotic. just those
Yeah.
little things every day, and so it's amazing. I'm just like, I'm always amazed at it to see in myself. And then, telling clients, and even like with, with Maya and I and how we talk about nutrition, it's the same exact thing. Like I've just now rediscovered the carrot salad again. And it's like the most amazing thing. I had this lady that commented on one of my social media posts that said she has been off her drugs for her premenstrual symptoms for years because she started eating the carrot salad. I was like, wow, that's awesome.
Yeah.
That's incredible, right? So we don't place enough importance on the smaller things and how much those can really snowball into really becoming the bigger thing, which is our function.
Yeah. And sometimes all you need is just that little one novel intervention and you'll get a big result.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Have you done much with the voice? Because Maya and I were talking about that, and she learned some things in her last class in Z Health about the voice. And we've been, of course, discussing that amongst ourselves because now we're doing a podcast together and we're really into like opening up that part of our own bodies and the jaw and those kinds of things. And Maya was talking about how she's really been trying to get her tongue on the roof of her mouth, which is supposed to be normal for most people. And I've been focusing on that too. Is there anything that you can add to that, Taylor? Do you know a lot about that part?
So I'm certainly not a voice coach, but you can have an enormous influence on voice through different stimulus that you apply, for sure. And actually, it happens in our studio every single day. We're just not necessarily aiming for a change in their voice, but it happens, especially when you do work at the brainstem level. And just to kind of give you an idea, activities like humming. Humming is a cranial nerve 10 stimulus, the vagus nerve, and that has a lot to do with voice. So anything that you do with the tongue is definitely going to potentially help with voice. And a lot of times when we're doing exercise with people and we stack different cranial nerve activations into the exercise that they're doing, you hear their voice change automatically.
Oh, wow.
And sometimes so much that it's funny for them and we all laugh about it. But it's not uncommon, especially to have someone's voice get deeper as they're sort of down regulating a little bit, and and their brain and their body's getting a little happier during the movement session. It's not uncommon for people's voice to get significantly deeper. Yeah,
that's cool.
Well, I love the videos that you've been putting out, especially of the recent one where you talked about like I considered it like the Neurology 101 of Z Health. That I like that one. And then I also like the ones where you're showing all of your tricks that you need to work on in your own self, but it really kind of shows how creative you can be in an individual workout because of what's happening to that person and how much it's not a cookie cutter way of looking at it, because you just have different things that might occur, even though you may say, oh, let's try this, but midway through a workout, you may have to alter it because the body has adapted or has changed right then and there. So talk maybe a little bit about what you work on and how you work on it in a way that people can understand maybe those videos that they see.
So I work on stuff every day. I'd say the thing that I probably work on the most is just general mobility, just because it feels good. And I just feel like having a good mobility practice that you can check in with daily can offer generally healthy people almost as much as they're ever going to need. I mean, that's the thing is when you are learning to move your joints well, and it's a practice and it does take time, eventually you end up with a tool that is so powerful. It will take care of literally 75% of all the nagging little aches and pains that you might have. And I'm just a big believer in having a toolbox that's self-sustainable, because I don't want to have to go outsource my health to someone else when something goes wrong. I want to be able to reach into my toolbox and start moving in a way that is going to help my body. And then most importantly to me, I need to know that what I'm doing is working. And I think that's that big paradigm shift with Z Health that they're giving us through education, is that now we can test and assess ourselves to make sure that everything that we're doing is actually helping. So for me, it's joint mobility every day for sure. And then I'm doing a lot of vision and vestibular work too. Particularly right now, some visual skills that I'm really lousy at. And a lot of that stuff for me is getting better at focusing back and forth between near targets and far targets. So back and forth, back and forth, back and forth. And then also like saccade motions, which is just like rapid movement, like jumps of the eyes. All that stuff I'm still working on because it needs to get better. So those are sort of like my daily practices. And when I'm like training a little bit more aggressively, I'm trying to take that stuff and package it into my training that makes it a bit more specific to how I want to use my body, particularly with Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu, because that's something that I like to do in my, as a hobby. And then also fly fishing is another hobby of mine. And so, you've got, I got to be able to wrestle people and, then I got to be able to, wade
Wrestle the
through
fish.
wrestle fish and
Well,
wade through rivers. And
we just talked to Rafe Kelly, and you're describing exactly what he said. Your locomotion's the first primal movement, and then you manipulate an object, and then you have to try to I guess, I don't know if manipulate's the right word but take an object and carry it and hold it that's moving, which would be a fish, I suppose, right?
yeah.
Kind of hard. It's really hard to control that. But yeah, it's really cool. Can you share one exercise for the eyes that would be really beneficial for most people to start with?
Yeah, I'm going to share the one with you that I'm really lousy at.
Okay.
And I just think it's so important, especially for people that are they just have a lot of screen time. They're in front of computers all the time, improving visual skills and, moving our eyes to their full ranges of motion is so important. But basically the drill that I referred to is called a near far jump. And at the most basic level, what you would do is you can literally use your thumbs or your index fingers, and you have a target in front of you, maybe, anywhere from 6 to 10 inches away. And then you'd have a target in the distance. Now I'm just going to use my other thumb. This target, my target that's in the distance, could actually be at a much further away distance. It could be something on the wall. It could be out the window at 100 yards. This is just kind of typically how you might start. And without moving any of my kind of trunk musculature and head and neck, I want to be able to take my eyes from my near target and jump them to my far target. And then when the targets come back into clear focus, I'm just going back and forth. So I'm just jumping near to far, waiting for the target to come into clear focus. And you're just going back and forth. And it seems like something that's just so simple.
Right.
But like we talked about, especially when you use a target that's way off in the distance, we aren't getting much time in our lives these days to look at the horizon. And when we go from far targets to near targets, the shape of of the lens of our eye is changing. And so that's a really important skill to have, particularly because it's so important for survival and performance, because we got to be able to look at stuff in front of us and jump our eyes to the horizon back and forth rapidly, and we have to obtain really accurate information when we do that. When I start going through this stuff with clients, a lot of times it'll take 2 or 3 seconds for the targets to come into focus, or they're going to have issues with accuracy in terms of where their eyes land. Sometimes they sort of forget where the target is and they overshoot it or undershoot it, and they have to kind of remember where that target is. And so there's an accuracy piece of that drill too. But that is just simple near far jumps. And literally you can just start in kind of small space with your own fingers. And then what you would do as you get more comfortable with it is now you would pick a distant target on the wall, get comfortable with that. And then maybe you can even go outside and try something that's even further away. And then I guess what I should say with any vision training is that there's some level of caution that you have to exercise when you introduce visual exercises to people. One of the reasons being is that the closer we apply a stimulus to the brain, the more powerful it is. And that means that sometimes things can go really, really well, or sometimes things might not go well. And, you have to, a lot of that comes down to history and past injuries. If you've ever had a concussion or a whiplash injury or an injury to the face, neck, or jaw, vision training might have a level of sensitivity to it. So we always say that when you start visual exercises, you want to dose it out appropriately. Only do a few repetitions at a time to see how you feel. If you can test something before and after, like a simple range of motion, how does your squat feel? Something like that, you can get some immediate feedback to whether or not your nervous system is perceiving it as safe and perceiving it as a happy exercise for you. But the thing that people should know is if you were to ever get something, some kind of symptom from it where you had a headache or you felt lightheaded or nauseous, you definitely want to put that down. You might need to work with somebody like a professional that can guide you into things a bit more specifically. But for generally healthy people that aren't running into that stuff, starting to do vision drills right away is awesome.
Cool. That's great. Thank you.
That's awesome. Thanks. There was a question I had, but one of
you want to think about it for a second? And
go ahead.
Okay.
Go ahead.
And with that goes with, a low energy brain. So have you noticed, how can you determine whether it's that or both? If maybe someone's just not got enough fuel for the brain, and because I've seen also people's sight go and stuff like that when they don't have enough energy to actually
like what you just said there. What did you use? You said low energy brain.
Yeah.
That's awesome. That is enormous in the work that we do. And just to give you an idea, usually when people come to see us and one of their goals is to reduce pain or eliminate pain over time, when pain doesn't go away, well, let me just say this, pain is kind of easy to deal with. When you have a good assessment process and you know that everything you do is a stimulus and it's an applied stimulus to a person, and there's always an instantaneous outcome to that applied stimulus. So if you just simply check and mark your findings, you can discover a lot quickly, and you should be able to modify pain rather quickly. And it doesn't mean that we're able to fix somebody like that, but it means that if you come in with a 6 out of 10 pain, we should be able to get that to a 5.
Yeah.
Right? And sometimes we get it to a 0. But I guess the point I'm trying to make is pain can be modified rather quickly. And when it becomes really hard to modify and things aren't getting better and they're getting worse even, a lot of times that comes back to what you just mentioned, which is the brain that doesn't have enough fuel.
Yeah.
And so it's super important for people to know that fueling comes into this. And if you are running into fuel disturbances, and just to give you an idea, like the main one that we see is problems with breathing, because breathing is our fastest, most readily available form of fuel. If you have breathing issues that are causing a fuel disturbance in your body, it's going to be a lot harder to do everything. And visual training, vision training, because it's so energy expensive, will burn out your fuel supply so fast you won't even know what happened. And then a drill that started out being good might not be good anymore 10 minutes later.
Right.
And so this is one of the things that we constantly have to monitor with people, because if we overdose you with exercise when you have a fuel issue, then you won't, first of all, you could get worse, but it is much, it's perceived threat, and it's much harder to get results to stick when you have those ongoing fuel issues.
Yeah, that's a great point. I like that. Yeah, thank you.
Go ahead.
So when you work with new clients, what do you find is the hardest thing for them to get to understand? Like, what do you kind of say to them in times of, like, in that one-on-one, you're trying to explain them something, you're showing them something, and they're still not getting it. What do you kind of tell them to help them kind of see what's going on?
Well, I think the hardest thing for people to understand is that, and I guess I'm going to go back to the pain example just because people like the pain example, but I suppose this could be a performance example too. When you're experiencing pain, you're just a lot of times if there's been no injury event, which is oftentimes the case, you are experiencing an output of the brain. And so we always say to our clients, well, as we're educating them, that pain actually lives in the brain, not really the body part where you feel it. Mm. And when people hear that, it's like, wait a minute, are you saying that it's all in my head? And I'm like, no, I'm not saying it's all in your head. I'm kind of saying it's all in your head. It's an output of the brain. And what that means is that if we can lower all those perceived threats in your life and, within your movement options, we can modify pain. And what that really means is we're making your brain happy. We're giving it what it wants, what it needs. And it then basically gives us less pain sometimes and an increase in performance. So I think that that's probably the first thing client education wise that's like really hard for people to understand. But I can tell you that when you start educating people on pain, it can be really profound in helping them eliminate pain. Because it is generally not known in our general population that pain is an output of the brain and it doesn't live in the body part where you feel it. And people that have had ongoing pain issues for a long time just think that something's really broken inside their body. And so we find that by educating them on what pain is as a first step, we oftentimes experience them kind of eliminating pain much faster because we're actually giving them that education on what it is. Whereas now they're not as confused, thinking that something's broken inside them. And that's just for the example where there's been no injury event and we're just dealing with one of those outputs of pain. Obviously, you can have an injury event and you can have tissue damage that is involved in why a person's feeling pain. But to give you an idea, 80% of the people that walk through our door say something hurts and they can't relate it back to an instance where there was an injury event.
Wow.
Which is, in those types of people, that pain we're able to modify that rather quickly.
That's great.
And so part B to my question would be, what about the ones that come in from the doctor's point of view and said, well, my doctor saw on my x-rays that my compression in my cervicals is too close and that the best way I can handle that or for any pre-injury or something that it may happen in the future, because I don't want my spinal cord to get hurt or if I fall or something. So they say, go ahead and do a fusion. Or someone who has stenosis in the lumbar, but their doctor says, well, you don't have pain, but you have compression when we need to take care of that. What do you tell people who have that kind of information?
The first thing I tell those people is that, well, first of all, I always encourage, like, if you have a lot of pain and it's reoccurring and it's debilitating, like I'm never saying don't go get it checked out. Like, I'm actually trying to encourage people to utilize their resources so that they can get more of the story, because it can be very useful. But in the case that a person, has back pain or something, and the advice being given to them is, let's do like a precautionary type of surgery or something. I think it's just important to educate people right away that if you need more space in your spine, we can do that through movement.
It's built for that.
Yeah, it's built for that. And there's a lot of things that can be done. And a lot of people feel like when they've made their rounds and tried different things, they feel like they've tried everything, but they almost, in most cases, haven't tried much yet because they forgot the movement part.
Yeah.
Which to me is like amazing, because movement is one of those things that by design is supposed to inhibit pain.
Right.
And so if a person, is in that stage where they're being given advice, like, let's do a precautionary surgery, just, or something like that, I'm definitely trying to educate people, that there's probably more options for them. But then at the same time, like, I personally and professionally have to be careful of how much I do get involved in that process. I'm trying to knock out those cultural traps as much as I can, but you know, it's just it definitely is challenging, especially being on my end, where, you know, you're trying to educate people, and what you're saying doesn't match with what
Yeah.
the norm is coming from their medical professionals.
Yeah, and I agree. It's you know, it's education, and what I
Yeah.
like about what I've learned so far, especially from Z Health, was there's definitely different avenues that you can take, and there's more hope than there is finality. Like, I find that older people tend to feel like they're just getting caught up in that aging paradigm. Like, I've
Yeah.
reached a certain age and there's no coming back from it.
Yeah.
But like, all this stuff that we're just talking about is to revisit that someone who is in pain or is finding limiting range of motion, or limiting, or their life's being limited because they haven't done movement, you can actually bring it back into their lives and allow them to really adapt back into that moving that they could they haven't been having, you know.
Yeah, definitely. Definitely.
Yeah, it can be a joyous and fun experience too. And I think that's part of it, is that, you know, a lot of movement isn't so fun for people.
Well, we've kind
If
of
Yeah.
made
they're,
the
if they're,
fitness industry, yeah,
yeah, go ahead. Yeah.
the fitness industry has kind of made it into this like work, you know, I have to work out.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
then, like, one of the
It's not
things I did,
play.
no play, like today,
Right.
what I did with a client was she actually likes, there's a lot of people who like to play with balls. And so,
Yeah,
Yeah.
they
you know,
really do. I've
going
found that
back
too.
into taking you know, balloons, and
Yep.
actually utilizing different colors, and whether or
Yeah.
not you tactile touch one with one color, one hand, or whatever. And
Yeah.
she was laughing the whole time, and it was she was, you know, exhausted, you know, but
Yeah.
that
Yeah.
was the most important. Eye coordination, it has a lot of significance. You know, these
That's
games that we
awesome.
used to play when we were kids
Yeah.
Yeah.
now have a real staple for why older people should do them also.
Yeah, play is huge.
Yeah.
There's so much going on with play, and honestly, a lot of times, and I've been in this scenario before where I'm working with a client and we're just not figuring out that last bit of, you know, what do we need to do to get this person to feel optimal, or just knock out that last 10% of pain. And, you know, it feels like we've exhausted all options. And then I'm like, all right, I've been here before. Let's just go. Let's just play. Like,
Yeah.
get out
Yeah.
the letter balls, get out the coordination charts. Let's juggle. Let's do things with memory recall and activities that get us to move dynamically and step outside of that linear box. Because when we exercise within the fitness industry's constraints, it really, I think, is negative in the long term, just because it's so linear.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's so linear, and so play is huge, and I've seen play help people so much, and there's just so much going on with it, neurologically, and when people have a good time and they build those experiences with movement, it literally can help them feel better and move better, for sure.
Yeah. Not to mention that you'll probably have a client for life after
Yeah.
that. Um, and yeah, I remember when I was coaching gymnastics, that like what Maya mentioned, the balloons, we had a whole bag of balloons that we just let go, and they just, you know, just pop them up. Like, they wouldn't let them touch the ground, and they just keep them up
Yeah.
off the ground. It was so much fun. And
Yeah.
the costs for those were basically nothing, you know, so they just played for hours with
Yeah.
balloons. You know, I was just always amazed at that. So
Yeah.
yes, you can do that with adults too. And there's lots of games actually that you can play with adults, that involve balls too, and
Yeah,
balancing and
definitely.
those kind of fun things. Yeah.
Definitely. And, you know, going back to like helping a person feel better and reduce or eliminate pain, it's like when you start playing, especially if you start introducing things to them that remind them of activities they used to do,
Yeah.
there is an enormous amount of significance to resurrecting old movement maps, you know, and taking adults that do have athletic histories and making whatever you're doing feel like that activity that they used to do.
Yeah.
All of a sudden you go from watching somebody have a lot of difficulty learning new movement to just like exploding out of that and moving really well, all because you just shifted what you were doing a little bit and made it feel like something that their brain already knew how to do.
Yeah.
And the fun factor that comes with that is huge for having a person just build a better relationship with their movement and feel better in the process.
Yeah. It's amazing to see people just light up, like, you know, they just become kids again, and
Yeah.
they actually see that they're coordinated better than they really thought. You know, a lot of times as we get older, a lot of them feel like they're losing their ability to balance and stuff.
Yeah.
And you watch someone just forget that they have a balance issue, and they'll be reaching and lunging and you know, and if you put you know, certain rules to the game, you know, it changes their attitude. Like, if I can't do this, I want to do it better. You know, so they, you know, it's not like I have to push them through the last, you know, set of you know, of the last, you know, couple of reps, you know, and you're looking at their face and they're kind of contorted. They're like, oh my God, I know I'm supposed to do this, but I hate this. And in the end, they're just like, no, I want to do more, you know, and you're like, okay, go do more.
Yeah, I agree.
So if there's anything that, Taylor, you want to add to the conversation, or if you just want to tell people how to find you and how they can look for your services and contact you and all that.
That would be awesome. So people that want to find us can find us on our website, and our website is KRUSEELITE.com. We are very active with social media, and our handle on Instagram is Kruse Elite. And then we have also some different types of services in addition to being able to come and work with us face-to-face for private sessions. I also do private sessions online. And we also
offer. How that works, actually? I'd love to hear more about that.
like this on a Zoom call.
Okay.
This on a Zoom call. So, and we also offer an online membership program where I deliver weekly content to health professionals and also movement enthusiasts. Basically, what we do on a weekly basis is I will create a lesson on one of 6 qualities. And basically what I do is I cycle through 6 qualities: balance, coordination, mobility, stamina, speed, strength. And each week our members get a lesson anywhere from 10 to 15 minutes long in their inbox. It's just me blabbing away, talking about the brain, talking about movement. And then I give people ideas on drills. And the idea is that we're doing it so that people can get away from feeling stale with what they're doing as trainers and as just movement enthusiasts, and just like sparking that creativity and teaching them ways to bring that novelty back into their exercise.
I love that. That's wonderful.
Yeah. So we're having a lot of fun with that. And the online session thing is just via Zoom call. And, you know, it's just a way for me to support our current clients that do see me face to face, who need additional support. Maybe they don't live near me. And then also I can kind of get people started through video calls, which is great. And then I also use it to consult with our athletes that we have. So I work remotely with some different athletes who are getting on video calls with me so that I can help them improve their movement or problem solve aches and pains that they have. And then we have basically a program that allows me to program them their self-care exercise and their training and all that stuff that they need, you know, for the month. And then we kind of then revisit it each month with a new video call, and then I program them their stuff again. So it's a lot of fun. You know, we live in a cool time right now where we can do that via the internet. So we're having fun getting involved in that. It's relatively new for us, but it's been cool.
Nice.
Awesome.
All right. Well, thank you, Taylor. Thanks for coming on. We really enjoyed this conversation, and thanks for sharing your valuable wisdom with our audience.
Oh, my pleasure. Thanks for having me on.
Yeah.
All right. Talk to you soon. Bye.
All right. Thanks, guys.
All right.